hopefully by the time I finish, we'll have a bit of better understanding of what we mean when we say community and public engagement. Different people will use different terms, different sometimes definitions. If you don't hear people say community and public engagement, you'll hear others say human-centered design, others say people-centered approaches, others say public participation, community engagement only, or public engagement alone. So it really depends on who is speaking and what they're really driving at. The other is really to try and understand the convergence and divergence points when we talk about community and public engagement, communications, policy engagement, the session we just finished. And why at the AAS we actually make this distinction. And not just at the AAS, but why currently, globally, there is a drive to try and delineate these three. And then finally, to try and interest us in why we should care about engagement. So like I said, when we talk about engagement, it could mean different things for different people. It all depends on what you're aiming to achieve, but it could also be really dependent on the kind of research you're undertaking and the communities or publics you're trying to target. Just briefly, when we talk about engagement, that's what we try, or that's what we mean. Engagement is really about people. It's about those who we hope will use our research findings or research outcomes. We refer to them as end users. Those people who are not doing the work that many of you here in the room are doing, non-researchers or lay publics. It's about conversations. So it should be two-way. It is about generating dialogue. In certain instances, it could also be about generating debate. And it is really trying as much as possible to challenge the notion of looking at end users, of looking at non-researchers or non-scientists as purely recipients. Recipients of information, recipients of research results or research outcomes. So we are trying to say these people, lay publics, non-researchers, have something to bring to the table as well. Okay? And above all, it's about seeking perspectives. Perspectives different from those of us who are doing research. Perspectives different from those of us who are leading research. It is really about fostering co-production of knowledge. And some of you I know will be asking how. These are people who don't understand science. How can they co-produce? But we'll talk about that. So community and public engagement is also a spectrum. I got this slide from my colleagues at the Wellcome Trust to try and kind of show some of the differences in how many of us view community and public engagement. So we have what we call the must-do of engagement. When we talk about the must-do of engagement, it's usually focused on more or less the ethical principles of engaging communities and public in research. And when we talk about the ethical principles, we're looking at things as how do you secure ethical compliance? What do you need to do in securing ethical compliance? How do you engage publics in order for them to participate in your research? So really looking at research or participant recruitment into research, participant retention into your research studies. It's also about how you are able to actually get input of communities so that they can be able to input into your research. And many of us, I'm sure, know or use what we call community advisory boards. There's a lot of issues around the use of community advisory boards, and I will not want to get into that discussion. It's a whole different ballgame. But really, those activities that we do to try and acquire ethical compliance for our research is what we call the must-do of engagement. And for partners who work with us, when you submit your grant proposal, we expect that this is going to be part and parcel of your research or your grant application. It must be included. If it's not included, you're not going to have another opportunity to actually seek alternative funding. So that's the must-do of research. We also have what we call the must-do of research. And when we talk about the must-do of research, here we are basically focusing on how you're going to enrich your research. What do you do to be able to have your research questions relevant, so that ultimately your outcomes are also relevant? I can't get into breaking down what kind of activities. If you want those discussions, we are happy to share additional information. But basically, we are looking at that particular aspect, ensuring that researchers and institutions are accountable, they build partnerships, and those things that help researchers think about what needs to be done in terms of research. Then the ways to do is more or less where we try to get the public appreciate the value of science to society. Many of you have been talking about engaging school children, adopting a school. That would be an aspect of the wise to do, because then you are trying to foster interest into young minds in the field of science. Get them to appreciate what it means to be a scientist, a researcher, so that as they grow into adults, they would become part of that pool of researchers. Different things can be done to be able to help society value science. So that's how we categorize engagement across the board. And how you decide to do it depends on what your aims and objectives are. But what I would like to say is that ultimately, whatever you do regarding engagement should actually be geared towards maximizing the impact of research or the impact of the kind of work that you're doing. And by impact, we're looking at people actually adopting and using research outcomes, policy makers being able to translate your research findings into policy and ultimately into practice. That is what we mean when we talk about impact. So quickly, I'll just share our perspective regarding the differences between community and public engagement, communications, and policy engagement. We appreciate that a lot of institutions may not have the funds to actually dedicate specific staff to these different roles, because each requires an individual to effectively and meaningfully implement each component or each strand of this scientific citizenship component. But then how are we able to help one individual effectively implement all these aspects of scientific citizenship equally? Because that's where the big question is. If we look at Daniel there, and he's supposed to support you in being able to understand policy engagement, at the same time be able to help you deal effectively with media engagement, but as well be able to understand and help you effectively tap into that indigenous knowledge by working with lay publics. How are we able to help him, one individual, be able to deliver across all these three strands of scientific citizenship? So one of the key issues we try to do is to try and kind of show the differences, but also be able to appreciate the points of convergence. So for community and public engagement, the focus is on perspective seeking and being able to build trust. How are we able to reach out to ordinary people? In Tanzania, they like to call them, and I keep saying this because it's so interesting, they call them the Wanjikus, the Mama Mbogas of today. Here in Uganda, Omuntu wa bulijjo. How are we able to tap into that individual? Because each of them has something to bring to the table. How are we able to utilize their opinions, their fears, their concerns to then feed back into our research and ultimately enrich our research? That's what we call perspective seeking. But it also eventually leads to building trust, because then people are able to know that you actually appreciate who they are and what they can bring. Communication is a bit different. There could be overlap, and I will share what overlap there could be. But communication primarily focuses on informing, educating. Dr. Kello, I think, has gone out, nicely put it. The media, they educate, they inform, they entertain, and they generate debate. Now, in the field of research, science, or innovation, we like to look at communications as that platform where we are able to communicate, to educate about research, about science, but also we always use communication tools as a way to defend our work. You just said a short while ago how you fear to engage with the media because they misrepresent. So you would like to use media, for instance, to defend your work because you are sure of what you're trying to portray. So you're going to use it as a mode of defending science. Or when we see a news piece or when we hear misinformation or misrepresentation out there, we are going to use communication as that opportunity to then correct that error. So we use it as a mode of defending science, but also as a way of communicating, educating, informing. It's usually one way, unless there is a deliberate effort by those doing the business, communication specialists, to say that we are out to actually generate debate. Then it transitions from communication to engagement. Okay? And that's why in engagement, we have informing, consulting, yeah? Then we go to the next. Who knows the next? We have 4. Daniel. What's the next? So we have informing, consulting, collaborating, and empowering. And a lot of us still struggle, even in the Western world where engagement has really gotten to its peak, they still struggle with the final aspect. But when we talk about communications, that is how we kind of want to make those distinctions. So that as people execute their tasks, they're able to determine whether what they're doing is communicating or they are actually engaging. For policy engagement, many of you have engaged with policy. Professor Wankambo here must be an expert. I shouldn't be talking about policy when he's in the room. But we like to look at policy as that which helps us to use evidence to inform policy decisions. It can be academic evidence to inform whatever policy is being taken or to contribute to policy decision making. And we like to say contribute because, as you heard, it's not just evidence that determines whether a policy will actually be effected or whether research findings will actually be taken into policy or translated into policy. There are lots of other things at play. So we would like to say that policy engagement actually contributes to decision making. And this diagram is really to just show us some of the ways we distinguish aspects of engagement. So when we are informing, we're really looking at educating the public, making research more accessible. When you disseminate your research findings, you are making research accessible. So that is the component of informing. That's where a lot of communications aspects happen. Then when we go here consulting and exchanging, here we're trying to hear. We're trying to be more of listeners than speakers as researchers. We're trying to hear what people on the other receiving end are telling us, whether verbally or non-verbally, what they're trying to communicate. If we are going to do a research study and there is a bit of resistance, what are people not saying more than what they are saying? Or if they are saying, what are they actually saying? So we're doing more of the listening. We're getting people's views, we're getting their hopes, their concerns, their fears, and we are going to use that then to enrich our science or our research. And then collaborating is where we go into co-production. You deliberately go out to hear and seek information so that you can then work together in partnership with communities to actually develop your research. So whichever aspect you decide to take on, it's really guided by what your objectives are, what your research is looking at, and what communities you're actually targeting. So why should we care? Why would you bother to leave your science and pay attention to engagement? It's a whole lot, and I'm happy to share the slides, so I won't go into each. But primarily what we're looking at is to ultimately create a conducive environment where research can flourish. Because there is no reason why you would have bold ideas, great science, and it is not going to trickle down to the last person. That person is not going to find it relevant. This slide is just to share some of the how can I refer to it, cases that we have witnessed as a result of not engaging. Some of you here might be doing PhDs, but there might be some postdocs, I'm not sure. When you get to postdoctoral level, you're then focused on research. Probably you're looking to become a research leader. There is nothing as frightening as having invested in research. You have millions of dollars at stake, and the public is up in arms, refusing, rejecting, shunning the work that you're doing. These are just some of the experiences that we've come across. The DRC Ebola outbreak currently, you've heard of the doctor who was killed in DRC. You've heard of situations of medical personnel being attacked. It's being linked to politics and a lot of other things. Many of you ladies, you've heard about the challenges of the female condom. Yeah? I want to ask openly, how many of us have ever tried it? I have never. But why didn't it take off? Even after being, it was changed. FC2 was a modified version. Still, women are not using it. Why? Were women consulted? Were they asked whether that was the best product for them to use? This, I always like showing the picture in the center. It talks about the PrEP trials that were halted in Cambodia, in Cameroon, in the 90s. We lost an entire decade of prevention in HIV because the target population rejected PrEP trials at that time. Right now, it's standard of prevention. How many lives could have been averted if the people who were being targeted had actually been properly engaged? You VRI in your first presentation, you talked about this particular study. I don't have a pointer. Target malaria. Right now, they are conducting studies. Burkina Faso, I'm not sure if you've had the challenges Burkina Faso is facing. I'm not sure if you're going to face the same here in Uganda. They are facing a lot of resistance because some communities feel they have not been consulted, they have not been engaged, they are worried the mosquitoes could actually be harmful. The researchers there are facing a lot of challenges. I'm being told my time is up. Even in the US, where we think that the world has moved ahead, they are battling the measles outbreak because of certain pockets of communities who are resistant to vaccination. Why? Religious beliefs and ideologies and a whole of other things. So what are the implications or repercussions of not engaging meaningfully? I just thought I would share these as some of the case examples. Because today you might be doing your PhD, probably you're doing your PhD to just graduate, I do not know. Probably you're doing your PhD to get a promotion, I do not know. Or probably you're doing your PhD or postdoc to become a researcher or a research leader. You wouldn't like to be faced with these kind of experiences. So how are we trying to change the narrative? For us at the AAS, we are trying to ask how best can we help the continent begin to engage effectively so that science gains its rightful place and value. And one of the things we're looking at is being able to build a critical mass of researchers who actually understand and appreciate engagement. What Daniel is doing is one of the first steps. But we're also now rolling out a seed fund that is targeting early career researchers. And here we're looking at PhD and postdocs. Once you're successful and you get the seed fund, we are going to deliberately work with you to build your capacity in understanding what we mean when we talk about community and public engagement. And hopefully by the time you finish your program, you will be an ambassador, and you'll be one of the forefront fighters for engagement if you take up a leadership position. Maybe you get your own grant. We do not know. But we are also going to change the way we've been doing funding at the AAS. Previously, through the Deltas program, as you know, we have a theory of change that has 4 thematic areas. One of those thematic areas is scientific citizenship. And within scientific citizenship, we have different strands: policy engagement, media engagement, community and public engagement, and partnerships networking. Prof? Yeah. We've realized that because a lot of researchers are comfortable engaging with policymakers, engaging with media, it's more direct, it's more easy, because you know who you're dealing with. It's much more complicated identifying who your communities are. And so that particular component has lagged behind. Because of that, we're taking a deliberate effort to change the funding model. We will no longer be able to get funding, supplementary funding for engagement from Welcome. It will be directly applied for at the AAS. As we transition into Deltas 2.0, because right now it is Deltas 1, that is going to be one of the key aspects that programs are going to be assessed on. And that's why we're making a deliberate effort to push for additional funding, for additional capacity strengthening among you as fellows to be able to engage more effectively so that your science is more visible, is more impactful. And this is just an overview of our engagement strategy. It's a 4-tiered, 2 major objectives. We're looking at capacity strengthening, we're looking at changing mindsets. Changing mindsets is not an easy thing. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. So we need to begin with people like yourselves who still have an opportunity to understand and integrate this early on in your research careers. We are looking at institutional leaders like Professor Wankambo. I've engaged him severally on aspects of engagement. We're looking at CPE implementers or CPE for colleagues like Daniel and his colleagues elsewhere across the continent. And we're also taking deliberate efforts to look at young and early career scientists and researchers like yourselves. So sorry for going over the time. I know there was, I lost about 5-10 minutes. I thought I would have been quicker. But that is really our way of looking at engagement. We categorically split these strands because the component on community and public engagement has continued to lag behind, has continued to be ignored and neglected. And there is a deliberate push because ultimately when we do the science, we're doing it for the people with the ultimate aim of transforming lives. So what we do should be relevant. And how it becomes relevant is if only we can be able to put people at the center of the work that we do. Thank you.